Folks, welcome back to the Philosophy and Strategy channel, where we explore issues of war and peace through the wisdom of political philosophy and the meta level of transcendental thought. If you'd like to understand more about transcendental idealism, please check out my previous videos titled Why the West Lost the Peace and From Kant to Crises, the Forgotten Foundation of Political Reason. I post the links at the end of this video and also below in the description. My name is Dr. Edwin Micewski. As tremendous confusion and discord prevail in current peace negotiations and responses to the 28-point peace plan submitted by the US for Ukraine, I would like to discuss how to end the war in Ukraine in my next video. Today, however, before I do that, I want to focus as a inevitable prerequisite on how it all began by revealing the geopolitical theory that formed the intellectual backdrop against which this conflict and eventually the Ukraine war unfolded. Because make no mistake, ending a war requires understanding what caused it and abandoning the very policies that led to it. Failure to comprehend and acknowledge the true causes for the war stands in the way of agreeing on a sound peace agreement. Without adopting new concepts that transcend the obscure, ideologically driven strategies of the past, the most significant of which I'm about to reveal to you all, negotiated peace won't be possible. So particularly the Zelensky regime and leading figures in the EU and NATO have to listen up now. Since before Russia's so-called special military operation commenced in February 2022, a campaign instantly branded a war of aggression by Western ideologues, I have commented on the political misjudgment pursued by American and European security elites that made this escalation inevitable. Find respective essays on related issues on my blog www.edwinseditorial.com. I outlined the rationale of a preventive military action Russia was effectively forced into by the refusal of Western leaders to engage in serious security dialogue. Above all, refusal by the Biden White House and its neoconservative and liberal progressive allies on both sides of the Atlantic. Notwithstanding all this, level-headed observers have never doubted where the primary responsibility lay. And so it's worth taking a closer look at the ideational background, the intellectual framework that shaped the strategic concepts leading to this tragedy. At the heart of this distorted worldview and its pernicious security doctrine lies an old and poisonous influence. Influence that's rarely mentioned, seldom blamed, but it certainly crystallizes in one name: Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski, as National Security Advisor under President Carter, shaped generations of American foreign policy thinkers, neoliberals and neoconservatives alike. And all were taught one dangerous obsession: that America's global dominance depended on controlling Eurasia. No challenger, Brzezinski argued, must ever be allowed to rise on that vast landmass. U.S. supremacy, he claimed, hinged on keeping Eurasia divided and weak. He laid out this vision in his 1970 book, The Grand Chessboard: Primacy and Its Geostrategic Imperatives, where he wrote, and I quote, "Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be a Eurasian empire," end of quote. And another passage speaks directly to American leadership, quote, "For America, the chief geopolitical prize is Eurasia. America's global primacy is directly dependent on how long and how effectively its preponderance on the Eurasian continent is sustained." End of quote. And from this flawed premise emerged an even greater illusion, namely the notion that Russia, without control over Ukraine, would cease to be a great power. This logic inspired one of the most reckless doctrines of our time, the belief that the West must build a strong, Western-oriented, Russia-averse Ukraine. And that precisely was the pernicious concept that paved the road to the Western instigated Maidan coup of 2014 and ultimately led to the hot war in Ukraine we face today. Of course, in truth, Brzezinski's ideas were not original. They echoed an older geopolitical tradition that emerged in the late 19th and early 20th century. The thinking of Halford Mackinder, Nicholas Spickman, and other strategists of empire who viewed the world not as a community of nations, but as a chessboard of zones to be controlled. Brzezinski's worldview mirrored Mackinder's early 20th century heartland theory, the belief that control of Eurasia determines control of the world. What began as a geographic speculation in an age before global air power, nuclear powered blue water fleets, and intercontinental missile deterrence were even in existence, that became, in Brzezinski's hand, an ideological mission. He transformed Western strategy into a contest for unilateral domination, stripped of its moral dimension and blind to the technological and political transformations of modern security that had taken place since the days of Mackinder. One wonders why it never occurred to Brzezinski or to the generations of strategies who followed him that sustaining preponderance in Eurasia might have been better achieved by turning Russia into an ally and thus keeping that land mass under control. But be this as it may, it's almost inconceivable that such a flawed and in our day and age virtually nonsensical concept, a unilateral mirage kept alive by a generation of power intoxicated and morally indifferent elites, could have derailed the promising beginnings of the post-Cold War order in the early 1990s. And yet it did. This way of thinking subjected the world, and especially Europe, post-Cold War, to prolonged conflict, economic and social hardship, and outright war, a war that consumed the lives of tens of thousands of young men, in essence, for nothing. These entrenched strategic errors still populate the hearts and minds of political leaders today. Our security elites, for the most part, remain enthralled by warmongers, ideological zealots, and the self-serving advocates of the military-industrial complex. Dear friends, as they've proven throughout the past 35 years, the majority of US and European security elites are nothing but a bunch of strategic illiterates, clinging to outdated doctrines and a mindset of pride, greed, and self-righteousness. Unless they all, particularly the top security advisors to President Trump and the European Commission, finally rise above these outdated strategic designs, unless they accept that they themselves caused this war by following the unwise counsel of Brzezinski and his neoconservative heirs, they will continue to lose what they've already severely damaged, even though they had claimed to sustain and defend, namely peace, political dignity, and the well-being of their peoples. Please watch out for the next video in which we will discuss again from the vantage point of political philosophy and indeed epistemology the true stakes of bringing peace to Ukraine. I'm Dr. Edwin Misevsky, and this is At Stake. I'll see you soon. Take care.